Militaries usually come up with pretty cool names for their units, or at least I think so. I've been a part of organizations with call signs like Havoc or Punisher, and Storm Z kind of sounds like that. You know, it's like a unit that's on the attack. But in this case, Storm Z refers to the disposable infantry being used by Russia during their war in Ukraine. And Reuters recently did an investigation talking with members of those units, as well as other service members in Russia and family members from some of these organizations. It's titled, "They're Just Meat. Russia Deploys Punishment Battalions in Echo of Stalin." Now, as a little background, what they're getting at there is these punishment battalions, penal battalions, were used by the Red Army in World War II. They would empty out some prisons, some labor camps. Other times they would pull in soldiers from other units that maybe had tried to desert or had shown cowardice, you know, convicted of cowardice, not wanting to attack when they should attack, or maybe disobeying orders, anything like that. And they'd be moved into these penal battalions where they potentially, if they served honorably, could be moved back into the regular Red Army. So think about that. The prize for doing well in one of these penal units is that you get to go fight somewhere else on the Eastern Front. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Enemy at the Gates, the opening scene there, you have Soviet soldiers charging into German positions, and behind them are Soviet soldiers on machine guns mowing down anybody who retreats. That is pulled from some of these penal battalions. Right? Some of these guys were sent sent across minefields, sent across open plains, directly in view of multiple German machine gun positions, artillery positions. So a lot of them were dying. It was not a shock. The majority of these penal units were dying. So to keep them from retreating and keep them moving forward, the Soviets at times did put these blocking detachments in behind them. But getting into the article here, they say they are able to interview 13 people who were familiar with these organizations. They say the penal squads, each of which are about 100 to 150 strong and embedded within regular Army units, have typically been sent to the most exposed parts of the front and often sustain heavy losses. So a couple quick notes here. The use of prisoners in this war is not new. From what I'm aware of, at least, the first use there was with the Wagner group, specifically in and around Bakhmut. Yevgeny Prigozhin was traveling to a bunch of different prisons across Russia and was allowed to offer essentially a commuted sentence to some of these prisoners in exchange for service with the Wagner group fighting on behalf of Russia. A lot of those, that's where the term disposable infantry came in. I'll talk more to that in a second. But these Storm Z units, it's that same concept, still using prisoners or soldiers from regular Army units that are being sent there for discipline reasons. It's just fighting under the Ministry of Defense as opposed to fighting for Wagner. Now, in terms of the heavy losses suffered there, this is where the concept of human wave tactics was kind of being used during the war. There have been cases where large numbers of Russian soldiers have attacked kind of like that across an open area. But it makes you think of World War I with division size elements charging across no man's land. That's not at all how this played out. Some of these Russian convict units, disposable infantry, especially under Wagner, the way they were being used in Bakhmut is they were being sent forward in small teams. It could be 2 to 5, even as many as 10 at times, and they were essentially being used to draw fire. They were pressing into areas where Ukraine would then have to make the decision to give away their position and open fire and kill these Russian soldiers that were advancing across open territory in some cases, or let them continue to pass, right? They're not going to do that. So when the Ukrainian soldiers opened fire, it would give away at least some portion of their position, and then the rest of the Wagner group, the more trained units, the more well-equipped, along with artillery, would take the fight to those Ukrainian elements. So in a lot of cases around Bakhmut, these what also could be called Storm Z, but under Wagner were kind of the prisoner portion of their force, were being used like bait. Go out there, get shot, and then we'll know where to attack the Ukrainian forces. They say one fighter with a conviction for theft who was recruited from prison said all but 15 of the 120 men in his unit embedded with the 237th Regiment were killed or wounded in fighting near Bakhmut in June. So 15 out of 120 survived the fighting in Bakhmut. That is, now this is also something where when we're looking at the casualty counts for the two sides, one of the challenges around Bakhmut was that a lot of these prisoners were being used. They were very little to no training, right? And how do you weigh a casualty, if one of those casualties compared to one Ukrainian casualty who's been trained in the West and has fought on the lines on the front for 6 to 9 months, that's not one for one in terms of what the loss is to the force. And Russia was able to chew through a lot of this again, the term being used, disposable infantry, which is rough. If Russia's able to trade this disposable infantry for trained Ukrainian soldiers, you can understand why that is dark to think about, but you can see why Russia might favor that trade-off. Now, worth saying, that's kind of a big picture view, right? I'm certainly not saying that for every one prisoner killed, that one trained Ukrainian soldier was also killed or wounded, but you can understand kind of how Russia might want to go that direction. They say the squads also combine convicts who volunteer to fight in exchange for the promise of a pardon, with regular soldiers being punished for disciplinary breaches. I don't remember hearing much about this when it came to the penal units fighting in Wagner. I don't recall any stories of Wagner fighters that had signed on just as general infantry that if they got in trouble, got moved into one of these penal units. It could have happened. Don't remember hearing much about it, but it does look like, again, hearkening back to the Red Army of World War II, one of the ways these are being used right now is as a punishment to keep troops in line. They say Reuters was not able to determine how many soldiers in total are serving in the units, though the interviews with the people familiar with the matter point to at least several hundred Storm Z fighters currently being deployed to the front line. That passes the common sense test. You know, we don't know. We know they exist. We don't know how many there are. If they would have said in the tens of thousands, that would have been a little surprising. But to hear hundreds spread all across the front, you know, it's at least within the realm of possibility. Now, they add something here that I had not heard at all and would be interested in learning more about this. They say Ukraine's government has said that it also releases some convicts if they agree to fight in the war. Again, maybe I've missed that, but if Ukraine's government is saying that information must be out there. I'd be interested in learning more about how they are tackling the convict into the rank question. Continuing on, they say one group of around 20 Storm Z fighters in Zaporozhye recorded a June 28 video complaining about their treatment, saying, quote, "On the front line where we've been, we did not get deliveries of ammunition. We did not get water or food. The injured are not taken away. Still now, the dead are rotting. We were given dreadful orders that are not even worth carrying out. We refuse to continue carrying out combat missions." It is hard to understate how big of an OPSEC violation that is. And we've seen this kind of stuff from the beginning of the war. OPSEC, operational security. But what I mean is they are just blasting out to the internet, to the whole world to see, saying, hey, our unit, we don't have ammunition. We don't have food. We don't have water. They're not resupplying us. They're not able to pull our casualties out. To hear that from a unit actively engaged in a fight is a shocking amount of information made available to an adversary. So I don't know, anytime you see one of these from any side, because there have been, you know, videos from Ukrainian forces as well getting upset about how things have gone at the front. Anytime one of those videos comes out or one of those statements comes out, it makes me wonder if there's no reasonable way to move that up the chain. Like they've just hit a wall every time they've even tried to raise an issue. Or if, and it might be the case here with some of these Storm Z units, they just don't know. Like, how much training are these penal battalions getting? You'd think they'd take away their cell phones if they hadn't, you know, trained them on some of these OPSEC things, but clearly not. They say the relatives of the soldiers here, after the video was published, military police officers beat up the two fighters and others in their squad as punishment for their revolt. Since then, they said the two fighters had told them that conditions had improved. I don't know. Color me skeptical on that one. But I think overall, when looking at these Storm Z units, these penal battalions, whatever you want to call them, I think hopefully we can agree, just as human beings, that would be a horrible situation to be in, where your life is just not viewed as valuable or not as important, as you're viewed as expendable. I don't care who you are, what you're fighting for. The idea that any human being is put in that situation that's rough. There's no two ways about it. But that's all I got for now. I will link this article in the description below, as well as a link to the national security sit reps I put out on Substack. It's 7 to 10 of the biggest national security stories each week, along with a few podcast recommendations. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.